and welcome to our journey through the remarkable history of Ethiopia, a nation that stood resilient against colonial powers and became a symbol of African resistance. Here in the highlands of East Africa, a story unfolded that defied the seemingly inexorable tide of European expansionism which swept across the continent in the late 19th century. This is not merely a tale of battles and treaties, but a testament to the profound strength found in unity, strategic foresight, and an unyielding connection to ancestral lands. Our focus in particular will be the monumental Battle of Adwa, a name that resonates not only within Ethiopia, but across the African diaspora as a beacon of triumph. It was here, in 1896, that Ethiopian forces, under the astute leadership of Emperor Menelik II, delivered a stunning defeat to a modern European army, shattering the myth of colonial invincibility. This victory was no accident of fate. It was the culmination of centuries of independent governance, a deep understanding of the formidable landscape, and a diplomatic prowess that outmaneuvered imperial ambitions. Join me as we explore the intricate tapestry of factors that allowed Ethiopia to preserve its sovereignty. We shall delve into the sagacious leadership that prepared the nation, the very earth that protected it, and the ancient traditions that bound its people together in the face of overwhelming odds. This is the story of a nation that, against the prevailing currents of history, carved its own destiny, offering a powerful narrative of defiance and enduring independence that continues to inspire. The late 19th century witnessed an unprecedented phenomenon, the so-called Scramble for Africa. European powers, driven by industrial hunger for resources, geopolitical ambitions, and a pervasive sense of racial superiority, descended upon the continent. From the Cape to Cairo, vast territories were claimed, ancient kingdoms were dismantled, and arbitrary borders were drawn, often with little regard for the peoples who inhabited these lands. Ethiopia, an ancient empire with a lineage stretching back millennia, found itself squarely in the sights of a newly unified Italy, eager to establish its own colonial credentials and secure a prominent place among the European elite. The air was thick with the tension of impending confrontation, as the shadow of colonial ambition loomed large over the Horn of Africa. At the heart of the ensuing conflict lay the Treaty of Wal, signed in 1889 between Ethiopia and Italy. It was a document of profound contention, its dual-language version sowing the seeds of discord. The Amharic text, understood by Emperor Menelik II, suggested a friendly agreement allowing Ethiopia to optionally use Italian good offices for foreign relations. However, the Italian version, unbeknownst to Menelik at the time of signing, declared Ethiopia an Italian protectorate, effectively stripping it of its sovereignty. This duplicity, a common tactic in colonial treaty-making, was designed to ensnare Ethiopia within Italy's sphere of influence. When Menelik discovered the true nature of Article 17, he unequivocally renounced it, setting the stage for a direct and unavoidable clash. The Italian government, under Prime Minister Francesco Crispi, misjudged Ethiopian resolve and the formidable nature of its leadership and terrain. Bolstered by a belief in European military supremacy and fueled by domestic political pressures, Italy prepared for a military solution. In March 1896, near the town of Adwa in the northern Tigray region, the Italian forces, numbering around 17,000, advanced with confidence. They were met by a significantly larger, passionately united Ethiopian army, perhaps numbering close to 100,000, drawn from every corner of the empire. These warriors, armed with a mixture of modern rifles and traditional weaponry, fought with a ferocity born of defending their homeland. The ensuing battle was a catastrophic defeat for the Italians, a victory so decisive it reverberated across the globe, forcing Italy to recognize Ethiopian independence and halting, for a time, its colonial aspirations in the region. The triumph at Adwa was not merely a product of numbers or terrain. It was profoundly shaped by the remarkable leadership of Emperor Menelik II. He was a figure of immense political sagacity, a ruler who possessed a keen understanding of both the internal dynamics of his diverse empire and the complex chessboard of European geopolitics. Menelik was not a reactionary traditionalist clinging to the past. Rather, he was a pragmatic modernizer who selectively adopted foreign technologies and ideas that could strengthen Ethiopia's sovereignty. His ability to foresee the Italian threat long before it culminated in open warfare allowed him precious time to prepare his nation, unifying disparate feudal lords and regional powers under a common banner of national defense. Menelik's diplomatic acumen was truly exceptional. He skillfully navigated the treacherous waters of European rivalries, subtly playing British, French and Russian interests against each other to Ethiopia's advantage. He understood that these powers, while colonial in their outlook, also had their own competitions and spheres of influence to protect. By cultivating relationships and making careful concessions where necessary, he managed to procure significant quantities of modern firearms, rifles, artillery and ammunition from European sources, primarily France and Russia, who were wary of Italy's growing influence in the Horn of Africa. This arming of Ethiopia was a critical factor in leveling the playing field against a technologically superior European adversary. He turned the very tools of colonial expansion against the would-be colonizers. Beyond his military and diplomatic strategies, Menelik II embarked on a program of modernization that, while nascent, laid important foundations for the future. He initiated the construction of Ethiopia's first railway line, connecting Addis Ababa to the port of Djibouti, facilitating trade and communication. He introduced a national currency, established a postal system, and encouraged the development of modern education and healthcare, albeit on a limited scale. Crucially, his reign saw the consolidation of the Ethiopian state, extending its authority and fostering a sense of national identity that transcended regional loyalties. His leadership ensured that when the call to arms came, it was a united Ethiopia that answered, ready to defend its ancient independence with a spirit forged by centuries of self-rule. The very land of Ethiopia, with its dramatic and challenging topography, played a crucial, often underestimated role in its defense against foreign invaders. The Ethiopian highlands, a vast complex of rugged mountains, deep escarpments and towering plateaus, form a natural fortress. This is a landscape that, while breathtakingly beautiful, is inherently difficult for large conventional armies, particularly those unfamiliar with its intricacies, to traverse and control. The narrow mountain passes, the unpredictable weather patterns and the sheer altitude presented formidable obstacles to any invading force, demanding logistical capabilities that were often stretched to their limits. For centuries, this terrain has shaped the character of its people and their methods of warfare. This formidable geography inherently favored the defenders. Ethiopian warriors, intimately familiar with every valley, every hidden path, and every defensible ridge, could utilize the terrain to their strategic advantage. They could engage in guerrilla tactics, ambushing enemy columns in narrow defiles and disappearing back into the mountains before a cohesive response could be mounted. Supply lines, so critical for European armies dependent on ammunition, food and medical provisions from distant bases, became incredibly vulnerable as they snaked through hostile, difficult country. The Italians at ADWA, for instance, found their columns separated and disoriented in the unfamiliar, broken landscape, a factor that contributed significantly to their tactical disarray and ultimate defeat. The mountains themselves seemed to fight alongside the Ethiopians. Furthermore, Ethiopia's historically landlocked position, while presenting certain economic and geopolitical challenges in other contexts, also limited the avenues of approach for colonial powers reliant on naval supremacy. Unlike coastal regions that could be easily accessed and bombarded from the sea, any invasion of Ethiopia required a long, arduous overland march through challenging territory. This reduced the options for would-be colonizers and increased the logistical burden immensely. The natural defenses of the highlands meant that subduing Ethiopia would require a far greater commitment of resources and manpower than many European powers were willing to expend, especially when compared to other more accessible colonial targets. The land itself was a silent, steadfast guardian of Ethiopian independence. Chapter 4. Ethiopia's resilience, can't really be fully understood without appreciating the extraordinary depth of its historical sovereignty and the enduring strength of its imperial institutions. This wasn't just some newly formed collection of disparate tribes. No, it was an ancient civilization with a lineage tracing back to the Aksumite Empire, a major trading power that flourished from the 1st to the 7th centuries AD. This powerful kingdom, contemporary with Rome and Persia, left an indelible mark on the region, establishing traditions of governance, a unique script and early adoption of Christianity that would shape Ethiopian identity for millennia. The subsequent Solomonic dynasty, claiming descent from King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, further cemented a narrative of divine legitimacy and unbroken imperial rule that permeated the national consciousness. This long history fostered the development of relatively centralized governance structures, even amidst periods of regional autonomy and feudal power struggles. The emperor, or Negusa Nagast, the King of Kings, served as a potent symbol of unity and supreme authority, a figure around whom national identity could coalesce, especially in times of external threat. Over centuries, Ethiopia developed its own legal codes, administrative systems, and a tradition of imperial bureaucracy. And while these institutions may not have mirrored European models, they were well established and functional within their own context, providing a framework for mobilizing resources, administering justice, and organizing defense. This existing state apparatus was a critical asset when confronted with the threat of colonization, unlike many other African societies where colonial powers could more easily impose their own systems upon less centralized polities. A cornerstone of Ethiopian identity and unity has been the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, one of the oldest Christian churches in the world. Established as the state religion in the 4th century AD, the church became inextricably intertwined with Ethiopian culture, traditions, and national sovereignty. It provided a powerful ideological underpinning for resistance against foreign encroachment, particularly from non-Christian powers. The church preserved ancient texts, fostered education through its monasteries, and instilled a profound sense of shared heritage and divine protection among the populace. This deep-rooted religious and cultural cohesion, nurtured over nearly 2 millennia, provided a formidable spiritual and psychological bulwark against colonial ambitions, binding the diverse peoples of the empire together with a shared sense of purpose and destiny. Chapter 5. While Italy harbored strong colonial ambitions towards Ethiopia, driven by a desire for prestige and resources, the broader European colonial interest in this particular corner of Africa was, to a certain degree, more nuanced. By the late 19th century, other major colonial powers like Great Britain and France had already carved out vast and often more economically attractive territories across the continent. For them, Ethiopia, with its formidable terrain, established state, and renowned warrior tradition, presented a considerably more challenging and potentially less rewarding prospect for colonization compared to regions perceived to have more readily exploitable resources or more strategically vital coastlines. Its landlocked nature and the sheer difficulty of projecting power into its highland interior made it a less tempting prize for some. The perceived economic value of Ethiopia at the time also played a role. While it possessed fertile lands and some mineral wealth, it wasn't immediately apparent as a source of vast, easily extractable riches in the way that, for example, the gold mines of southern Africa or the rubber plantations of the Congo were. The investment required to overcome the geographical and political hurdles to exploit Ethiopia's resources might have seemed disproportionate to the potential returns for powers already managing extensive colonial portfolios. This is not to say there was no interest, but rather that the cost-benefit analysis for some European nations perhaps tilted away from direct large-scale colonization efforts, especially when faced with a state clearly prepared to resist. Italy, however, as a latecomer to the colonial game, saw Ethiopia as a key opportunity to assert itself on the world stage. It is crucial to distinguish this period from the later, brief, and illegitimate occupation by fascist Italy under Benito Mussolini from 1936 to 1941. This was an act of brutal aggression, condemned by much of the world, and met with fierce, continuous Ethiopian resistance. This later invasion, while temporarily suppressing Ethiopian sovereignty, does not negate the profound significance of the victory at Adwa nearly 4 decades earlier. ADWA demonstrated Ethiopia's capacity to defend its independence against 19th century colonial expansion. The fascist occupation was a different beast, a product of a more aggressive, ideologically driven imperialism. Yet even then, the spirit of Ethiopian resistance, forged over centuries and emboldened by the memory of ADWA, never truly faltered, ultimately contributing to the country's liberation during World War II. Chapter 6. The victory at Adwa resonated far beyond the borders of Ethiopia, sending shockwaves across a continent largely subdued by colonial rule. For Africans living under European domination, Adwa became a potent symbol of hope and a powerful refutation of the pervasive myth of white invincibility. Here was concrete proof that African peoples could, with unity, strategic leadership and determination, successfully resist European military power. News of the Ethiopian triumph, though often suppressed or downplayed by colonial authorities, spread through various channels, inspiring nascent nationalist movements and fostering a renewed sense of pride and possibility among colonized populations from West Africa to the Southern Cape. It was a spark that ignited the imagination of a generation yearning for freedom. Ethiopia's successful defiance played a crucial role in the intellectual and political currents that would give rise to Pan-Africanism. As the only African nation, alongside Liberia, founded by freed American slaves, to have successfully repelled European colonization and maintained its sovereignty throughout the scramble for Africa, Ethiopia held a unique and revered status. Early Pan-African thinkers and activists looked to Ethiopia as an embodiment of black self-determination and ancient African civilization. Figures like Webb Du Bois and Marcus Garvey frequently invoked Ethiopia's example, seeing it as a spiritual and political anchor for the global black community. The Ethiopian flag's colors, green, yellow and red, were adopted by numerous African nations upon achieving their independence, a direct homage to Ethiopia's enduring legacy. This profound symbolism found perhaps its most distinct cultural expression in the Rastafari movement, which emerged in Jamaica in the 1930s. For Rastafarians, Ethiopia, or Zion, is the Promised Land, and Emperor Haile Selassie I, who was crowned in 1930 and was a direct descendant of the Solomonic dynasty that included Menelik II, was revered as a divine figure, the living incarnation of God, or Jah. His coronation was seen as the fulfillment of prophecies, and Ethiopia became a central pillar of Rastafarian theology and identity. This deep spiritual connection underscores the immense global significance of Ethiopia as more than just a nation-state, but as a powerful symbol of black pride, resilience, spiritual heritage, and the unquenchable desire for freedom and self-determination across the African diaspora. Our journey through the highlands and history of Ethiopia reveals a nation not merely fortunate, but fiercely protective of its ancient inheritance. The victory at Adwa was no isolated incident, but the resounding crescendo of centuries of self-rule, astute leadership as exemplified by Emperor Menelik II, an intimate understanding of a formidable terrain that served as a natural ally, and a profound cultural and religious unity that bound its people against a common threat. These elements, woven together, created a tapestry of resilience that few could unravel. The echoes of Adwa continue to resonate, a testament to what is possible when a people are determined to chart their own course. Ethiopia's story is a vital chapter in the larger narrative of global resistance against colonialism, offering enduring lessons on the power of strategic foresight, unity, and an unyielding spirit. It reminds us that history is not solely written by the powerful, but also by the defiant, by those who dare to stand against the tide. The legacy of Ethiopia is one of an unconquered soul, a beacon that has inspired and continues to inspire movements for freedom and self-determination across the world. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of Ethiopia's indomitable spirit. Stay tuned for more stories of resilience and triumph from around the world. The human capacity to endure, to adapt, and to strive for sovereignty is a story that unfolds in countless ways across every continent, and it is a privilege to share these narratives with you.